You could never be nasa your friend when you're the bonnet. Ghana memo ye buya ne ye pepan training, centrane, treasure Ghana man and pesa morning. Kofi babone, me boko ko jani bonnet. Chema shanti boke nature Ghana man se munti, mini, or bra for me wafa hundi, Kuma modi momu jumedi munkunimidi, no say.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Abusec Media Online. My name is Kwaku Jimaima and today I'm privileged to be your host. We are right here in Assin Manso Slave and Emancipation area. We are here to get up close to and get details about our ancestors. As you know, every Friday as usual, we are live on campus. But today, we are here in Assin Manso, actually Assin Manso Slave and Emancipation area, to get some details about our ancestors. You know what? Let's go.
Mapubeba is the motto. Yanfa kotuloto. Mayimu mofrani yesi munya to bwase ne hombrase. Ubuni nidi na monkoto. Bible trese di weja ne wonani. Unkwana swawari wasase so. Inti munya brebre. Nana yemine odia. Shekamu mwani bi. Kedian pon kwami ensan. Osoni asase ya ensan. Nana no musama for ensan. Yeyi kwami kuma pa ye. Kedian pon kwami ensan. Osoni asase ya ensan. Nana no musama for ensan. Yeyi kwami kuma pa ye. Uwe na chen ofo front kime. Midna hama Ghana. The fret osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Yebo wudin, wudye wuyentin, wudu wunyasa na Ghana to hobe your hin, ewim yedin,
you by saying Akwaba. Alright, my name is Kwame Divine and I'm going to be your guide here at the Assin Manso ancestral riverside. The very last place that our ancestors who were held in captivity, in their chains and shackles, had their last ever bath before they were sold to various buyers to be taken out of this place to the new world. But before we embark on this journey, in the memories of the ancestors we've lost a lot of our ancestors walking from the hinterlands to get here, from here to the dungeons. Through the middle passage to the new world, a lot of our ancestors died. I would like for us to take just 1 minute of our time to have a silent moment for them. And after the 1 minute silence, I will just say, may their souls rest in perfect peace. And we shall all respond by saying, Ashe. Ashe. Ashe is a Yoruba word. It literally means so shall it be. Okay? So please, let's take a minute of silence. May the spirits of our lost ancestors rest in perfect peace. Ashe.
Ashe.
An awareness of our past is essential to the establishment of our personalities and our identities as Africans. That's a quote from Emperor Haile Selassie. From Marcus Messiah Garvey Jr., actually borrowed by Bob Marley. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. On this land, among the people of Benin, Togo, and Ghana, we have this common African proverb, and it stated, until the tales of the hunt is told by the lions, the hunts will always glorify the hunters. All I'm trying to tell you today is that Africans, we are failing to tell our own narratives. We are struggling to tell our own history. For that reason, almost all the books that we kept reading was written by most of these Europeans. But now Africans want to tell their own tales by telling their children or teaching them the history. And that's why you get to learn it today. At Assin Manso, a lot happened. But before I tell you about this particular facility, I shall take you back into time just a little bit. To when the land was a very big, vast land. No demarcation, no borders. Initially, the oldest known name of this continent was Akebolan. Akebolan means land of all creation, land of humankind. Many people call it Garden of Eden because we have it all on this continent. It was the Europeans who changed it. But before they arrived here, our ancestors had already fought among themselves for territorial expansions. Due to that, they had victims of wars. Those victims were never enslaved. Rather, they were inducted into the various cultures. These indigenous warfares gave birth to so so many of these victims. So they brought them all in and they practiced the same culture. Indentured servitude is different from the chattel slavery. Even though you are a war victim, you are still brought in. You are given life. Nobody will place you into chains and shackles. They moved freely until the Europeans started coming here. In the year 1400s, exactly 1471, we had the very first group of Europeans arriving here. The Portuguese were led by Prince Henry the Navigator. When they came here, according to the books, they only tried to trade with us in gold, ivory, pepper, spices. But that wasn't all. By the year 1500s, the Europeans have expanded to the Americas. They enslaved the people of America, the indigenous owners of that land. The Red Indians were taken hostage. They were using them on their plantations. That was when they formed the New England in Massachusetts and even the neighboring communities. Using them wasn't that fascinating because the people kept dying. The indigenous people, those who are very strong, will escape into the woods and come back no more. So it was then, by 1516, one of their kind, called Bartolomeo de las Casas, a Portuguese Roman Catholic priest, came up with a campaign that since the Europeans are using the indigenous people of that land, who were the Indians, since they were not doing well, let's use the Africans. The Africans are very much stronger than these people, and that marked the beginning. They sailed across oceans to this land, met with the people who were already here. The Portuguese were only trading with us in gold, ivory, pepper, spices. But things changed when Bartolomeo's group came here. According to the book, they carried their campaign to this particular part of the world and they met with the Portuguese. They went into chattel slavery. That marked the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. When they decided to go for the men and women, they can't go into our lands without going through the chiefs. So they went to the chiefs, telling them that, look, we actually have been with you for about 5 decades. We have seen how your people treat you or how you treat them. But then the system you are practicing is a system that will actually leave you stranded in the nearby future. We are telling you this because most of the war victims that you have were warriors. They are still plotting to fight against you. When they get to know about your strength and weaknesses, they are fighting with you to claim their lands. Let's help each other out. We have guns and gunpowders, weapons. We shall provide you with some, but to pay us back, we want the war victims. Our ancestors were so naive. They believed strangers over their own people. So then they gave out the war victims. In return, they took guns and gunpowders. So whenever you are in an argument, all I want you to know is that when these people tell us that we sold each other, there is a bitter truth in that. We actually did. For giving out the war victims and claiming guns and gunpowders in return, you actually did sell somebody. It went on like that for a couple of decades, until the Europeans realized they would need more of us out there. And so the Dutch, the Danish, the British, the Spanish, and then the French sailed across oceans to meet with the Portuguese. For over 130 years, the Portuguese have been the lead traders, until they were overpowered by the British. After the British took over, they introduced raiding, kidnapping, ambushing, burning people's home and forcing their whole family into chains and shackles. It doesn't matter whether you are a baby or not. Whether you are pregnant or not, they still have you in the chains. They were made to walk for so many miles. A historian here in Ghana called Akosia Adoba Pebi, professor of the University of Ghana, Legon, in her book entitled The History of Indigenous Slavery in Ghana from the 15th century to the 19th century, she gave us awareness of so many things that happened back then in the days. In that book, she made mention that out of the many slave markets that are scattered along the west coast of Africa to Senegambia, Gold Coast alone had about 63 of the slave markets. We have the slave market at Salaga, Sampa, Janani, Ketekrachi, Bono Manso, Techiman, Picoro, Assin Manso here, the dungeon at Cape Coast, Elmina, Fort Amsterdam, Fort Williams, all the way to the Christiansburg dungeon in Osu, Accra. If you cross Accra and you are heading southeast, you are heading to the Volta region. A town there called Atoko was also used as a slave market. There was this British historian who was traveling during the era of the slave trading. He kept a journal entitled The Short History of Gold Coast. In that book, he made us aware that many of the slave markets I've mentioned were playing functional roles, but two of them were playing historical roles. We have the Assin Manso slave market and that of the Salaga slave market. The distance between the two slave markets is over 400 miles. We are talking about over 653 kilometers journey. The ancestors in those chains and shackles were not picked on buses, not on horsebacks. They had to walk, and it took them almost 90 days. Coming through the forest, they went through the Mole National Park, a nature reserve that was full of wild animals. For them to walk freely through the park, many of our ancestors were being used as bait. The captors looked among them in the chains and shackles. Because the animals were feeding on them, they needed to protect some of them. So whoever is showing signs of weakness, they pull you out of the chain. They walk you for a couple of meters, have you tied to trees, give you multiple whips. The blood that oozed out of them got the animals attracted. As the animals were feeding on them, they moved the rest out of the park. They succeeded, but lives were lost. They then continued the journey and met the river called the Pra River. To cross the Pra River became one of the difficult aspects of the journey. Chains and shackles on them were not allowing them to cross by swimming. So then a lot of our ancestors got drowned there. All those who got drowned there were buried just at the bank of the river. They then continued the journey, but you see the women, beside them being raped, some of them were subjected to several other treatments, the stones and the metal mask treatment. Whenever the women looked into the eyes of their children, they felt heartbroken, so they began to cry. The people thought whenever they are crying, they are giving away their locations for people to come to their aid. So they were shutting them up with the two methods. They will force stones a little bit wider than their mouths in them, had it tied around their necks. If they won't use that, they will gather leaves into their mouth before covering it up with a metal mask. That way you get to shed tears, but nobody hears your voice. They got here so tired, hungry, dirty, and very, very skinny. It was here that they saw the need for them to be fed, not because they were hungry, but because they were looking too skinny. No buyer wants such a person. Whilst feeding them, they were looking among them in the chains. Mostly the men had bushy hairs and beards, so they were being shaved off with the broken bottles and knives. After that, they went ahead to look into their mouth, force it open, counted their teeth. The number of teeth they have in there helped them to put them into their various age groups before taking them on a walk to the ancestral river. We shall be going to the river, and when we come back, by then those people will be done and we can tour around the entire facility. So please, we shall be taking the walk this way, very quietly. You see how quiet you are. I want you to maintain like that. It's like this for me till we get to the river. As we walk, just be quiet. You are not a diasporan, so I wouldn't force you to think about your ancestors. If you were to be from the diaspora, like African Americans coming here, we will ask you to take the initiative of thinking about your ancestors and asking yourself just one question. If they hadn't survived, where would we be? If our ancestors hadn't survived to the new world, where would we be? Once you ask yourself these questions, you will get some answers to yourself. So we get to the river very quietly. We shall take the walk. So please, come with me.
Before that, I'd like to ask, why did we have to observe 1 minute silence, not 30 seconds?
The 1 minute is actually the only thing we could give the ancestors. They've given a lot for us. 30 seconds is too small.
Why not 2 minutes then?
Well, we can do as many as we can if you have time. Yes, but the 1 minute is the ideal minute. 60 seconds is the ideal minute we usually give to our ancestors. Yes.
Thank you
One
very much.
question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the place in which they were kept. You mentioned Assin so I learned that's also one place that they were kept to.
Okay, Assin Praso, they weren't kept there actually. They crossed the river to the next end. Yeah, so the river Pra, they crossed it to this end. So those who died were buried there. So they spent just a few moments there after crossing the river. Then they will bury them there. So you realize that most of the graves that have names belongs to the Europeans, not Africans.
Observing the 1 minute silence. You have to respond in a language.
Ashe is a Pan-African language. Among all the Pan-Africanists across the world, that's the word we all choose to respond to our 1 minute silent observation. After observing it, that's the
History behind.
Well, what I understand was that we would want something that is from the African continent. We would have said Amen or Amen, which is not ours. It's the European language. So Ashe being a language that is associated with the African continent, that's why it is widely accepted. But then if somebody have an Akan version of the Ashe, we will gladly accept it. We've been trying to find a way to get the word for Ashe, but then as it stands, we still haven't gotten any. All right, any more? Enyoho, Enyoho, so shall it be. Enyoho, I mean, fancy me gardening. All right, so we shall be taking the walk if there is no other question.
Dr. Kwame Nkrumah with the Winyasa to send Shoma, Africa Mamunia, you to Musa with him home, Bapoma, when you're at Saberima, when you're free to Sabronima, but no other room, Mama Ghana, and Yafa, who did, yes, I'm saying you know, Munya, Asunamunti, cricket, Bini, Mabu, Homeso, cricket, Adeshima, Mabu, Homeso, cricket, Santini, Mabu, Homeso, cricket, Santini, Mabu, Homeso, cricket, Ayini, Mabu, Homeso, cricket, Wawuni, Mabu, Homeso, Hausa, Aquapim, Achim. Gomba, crying. Ghana for you now. I feel me big or Sergeant for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Brother Jensen. Nana no penny for Democrat to hold you Ghana, may you my so yeah, Tonsa. After money Ghana, Bush me be around some force and more Jensen. When you church, Japan, stress and more Donsa. If I bonny can and come Ghana and big was here, dear money triso, on my Ghana, Quasso, on my penny Quasso, or Graf for me Quasso. I'm Red Quasso, young cock.
Okay, so we are currently here at the Manso Ancestral River, the last bath. Where the ancestors took their last ever bath is down here. There are two main rivers here, the river called Donkonsio and the other one called Ochi River. Donko has its source from this particular community. Donkonsio literally means the slaves river. Our ancestors were not allowed to go to the other side of the river where it flows very fast. That's what we call the Ochi River, meaning something that could grab you. They were not allowed there because the captors were scared. If they allowed them there, they will get washed away by the river and they will lose everything. After 400 miles of walking to this place, to lose their commodities, it will be like they have labored in vain. So then they kept them on this side. Very calm part of the river. It flows but flows gently. It has a different color as compared to the Ochi. So then they took them there with their chains and shackles on them. They allowed them into the river together with a metal ball around their ankles to hold them still, preventing them from escaping. Whilst the ancestors were there in that river, many of them couldn't use their hands to clean themselves up. All they could do was to get closer to each other and clean each other up. When the captors saw them doing that, they thought they were consoling each other or probably plotting to take off the chains to escape. So then they separated them. After the separation, they cut the bamboos long enough with the help of the itchy leaves. They used that as a form of brush to scrub them. Scrubbing them with the bamboos and then the branches left them with bruises all over their bodies. After they were bruised, they pulled them up here. The entire perimeter was used as the auctioning center. So they left them here for a couple of minutes. After they got dry, they come with shea butter and then palm kernel oil. Apply it on their bodies. Allow them to look shiny and presentable for the buyers to come here to grab them. When the buyers came here, they were with a very long handled tool. The branding tools were left in the fire before going out there to select whoever they want to select. After selecting them, they move them to the trees, chain them to eat, and then use the hot rods on their backs, their chest, shoulder, forearm, leaving the marks on them to show to the public that they are now their properties before they were moved to the dungeons. Those who were taken to the dungeons had to spend 3 months or maximum 6 months in there before shipping them out. I always say the lucky ones get to be shipped instantly. Those who were left in the chains here were considered useless commodities. Not a single person in that chains and shackles saw the next daylight. Every single one of them were killed. After killing them, they dumped their bodies all around. They call them useless commodities because they will not carry them along. Today, we call the place the bamboo slave dumping site. Others call it the bamboo slave cemetery. I don't like the word cemetery because they were not properly buried. Today, to find ourselves here, as children of the land, many of us, I don't allow going down this way anymore because for us to return, journey back 6,000 miles away from the land to this place, we are not here for our last bath, but rather we are here for a first bath of return. So that is where I will allow my aunties and uncles and brothers and sisters from the diaspora who have visited us to go to, for them to wash their hands, wash their feet, get the water touching some part of their body, wherever you want it to touch. As you do so, you pray, mostly thanking the ancestors for keeping you alive today. Because if they hadn't survived, I'm not sure we would be here. So then after you wash yourself, you thank them for bringing you to this place. If there is any other thing you would like to request from them, in spirit, you have to put faith in the affair, and that's what we will do down there. So I wouldn't waste much of your time, but then ask you for us to walk down to that side. So please, if you will come with me. All right, for the students, if anyone has a question before we go.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
So when you were coming, you knocked before we. When you were coming, you knocked before we entered. Why?
All right. That's a very nice question. I had to knock because the space doesn't belong to us. Okay, she asked when we were coming in, right from the other gate to this side, I had to knock on the door or the gate before we walked through. And she was asking why. The reason why I knocked is that this place is full of the spirits of our ancestors. And so for us to just barge in on them, you can't do that. You have to knock and seek for permission to walk through. I would have shouted, Agu. But then I chose to knock, just to announce our presence and then walk through. So that's why I knocked on the door.
Thank you.
All right. Any more?
Any other questions? Sir, please, I'm seeing some bamboos painted with red and black. Is there any significance to it?
Yes. So the bamboos are there to guide us to the river. We painted it with the red and black because the red signifies the blood of our ancestors, the blood shed for us. The black on it signifies who we are as black people. So the black is for the people. It has a green color, but then we chose to eliminate it and then use the environment. So just like the Marcus Garvey colors. Red for the blood, black for the people, green for the land. So that's why you'll see the red and black on this. Yes. All right. Are we good?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So we are not going to go down like
Not
we
this
used
way.
to. Oh, we used to do it that
Yes.
way, right?
But we stopped doing it because
That's not our last bath. No, it's our first
it's our
coming
first.
back.
So we go to
I
this.
like that.
Thank you.
I like that. So they basically like piled it up right here so we can't walk down.
All right, please.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
The last and first part. When they came wherever they came from, they there first and the first, and this is the last.
So,
first
last and first bath. When they came from wherever they brought them from, this is where they had their last ever bath. Our ancestors took a last bath here, and that is where they went. But for you, per se, you are a descendant of the ancestors who were taken away, for now you have returned. So you get your first bath. It doesn't matter the one you took in the hotel or in your apartment. This is it. Yeah, this is the first one, a spiritual one, of course. And that's why we do that right here. So when you get there, you have to put your all in it. Because it's not just you washing your hands, but taking off the load off your shoulders. I always say this is more like a burden on us.
Yes.
But when we come back to wash it off, we feel light and we do what the ancestors want us to. So please, if you would want to come with me, but you have to be very, very calm.
Ashin. Asase ya ensa, nana no musa manfo ensa, yeyi kwa mi kuma pa ye, kedia pompa mi ensa, osoni asase ya ensa, nana no musa manfo ensa, yeyi kwa mi kuma pa ye, kedia pompa mi ensa, osoni asase ya ensa, nana no musa manfo ensa, yeyi kwa mi kuma pa ye, kedia pompa mi ensa. Never been na say your friend when you're the bonnet. Ghana memo ye buye ne ye pe contrene, centrene, treasure Ghana man and pesa money. Kofi babone, me boko ko jani bonnet. Chema shanti boke nature Ghana man say munti, mini. Obra for me wafa hundie, kuma modi momu jumedi munkunumidie. No say, Jangara assassini e ya body de mayen. Mujana nanan mi gunyade to homayen, domien, buayen, jayen, adu. Many will so say yen should be a biatwaso, momo so cataso, or may you mudi emaso, and then if you said the way your mama gana will be a lawyer for doctor for mammy miss a nurse for ready for driver for mammy miss a fita for equa for tailor for mammy miss a baba for soldier for teacher for mammy miss a suku for rap for Ghana rap soft for me say me straight or man for when you know your back, she say yet the fact. By you will say you back one ebu, or come more embu, crab asante kotopo. Map beba is the motto, young fan got to lotto. My mumo franny, yes, in Munyanto Brasenia home Brassi, Guni Nidi Namon Koto, Bible Chess said the way Johnny Wunani, Unkana Swari was so, and Timonia Brebre. Ghana, I mean, oh dear, she come on money. Kedian Kwame and Sam, Osoni Asasea and Sam, Nanano Musama for and Sam, Yi Kwame Kuma Paye, Kedian Kwame and Sam, Osoni Asasea and Sam, Nanano Musama for and Sam, Yi Kwame Kuma Paye, Wait, Nanchang, of front women, with the Hama Ghana, the Fred Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Kuma. Yebo wudin, wudye wuyentin, wudu wunyasa na ejigana to hobe yo hin, ewim yedin, brofoko mabo brime fise wo se wakoko donko doso te senwin. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wudu wunyasa te senshoma, Africa mamu nyina ye jutu mu se wudu mu homa, bapoma, weni ate saberima, weni afriti sabronoma, wadum no adabro mama magana nyafa ahudie, yesha man se nyina mutumunye aso na muntie, krikete ibini mabo home so, krikete adeshema mabo home so, krikete asantini mabo.
Okay, so I'm here with Sabina Abeka, the sports prefect of Aburaman Senior High School. What have you learned so far?
Oh, I've learned many things.
What are some?
Well, I learned about the first bath and the last bath.
When we went in there,
We saw some bamboos painted red and then black.
what does the red stand for?
The red stands for the blood our forefathers shed for us.
It's true. The red stands for that. Thank you very much.
So, I would like to talk to another person. So, what is your name?
Irene Kumandela and Bible for Aburaman Senior High School.
Okay, thank you very much. And what is your experience so far?
Oh, I had a lot of fun and I have known how our ancestors were able to do things.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to talk to another person. So this time around, I'm not talking to a lady and it's a guy. I'd like to know your name. Okay, so Derek, how do you see this place? Like stay here. Really? Are you sure? Aren't you scared of the ancestral spirit?
I believe their ancestors will speak to me.
Okay, so that's your belief. Okay, thank you very much. What's your name?
Alright, so let's move to the library.
Okay, I can see some water in your hair. What's that?
Yeah, that was the first bath. The river. We were told to wash ourselves to show some sort of patriotism. So I went down and washed myself.
Okay. So, do you believe that the water has our ancestors' spirits in them?
Oh, actually, no, but it all shows the spirit of patriotism because our ancestors went through that water in order for us to be alive. So we have to also show some sort of gratitude.
Okay, so before you go, I'll allow you to go. Before we entered, they made us observe some silence. How many minutes?
We were made to observe a silence for 1 minute.
That's good. Thank you very much. So I'm here with my teachers, and I'd like to, have an interview with them also. So, say to you, I'd like to ask, please, how is your experience so far?
Well, it's a very good experience. Personally, I have my own ideology about these things, so I don't know how others also feel, but I have my own, and then it's okay for me. It's very good, very good.
Oh, okay. Say, I saw you wash down in the water. So, do you believe that the water has some kind of protection for an individual?
Certainly, it all boils down to your beliefs or your belief system. I washing down there, I think I'm connecting with my ancestors, and then I know what my ancestors can do for me when I call them into my life and then ask them to do something for me. Yes, so that's how I believe. Although, yes, it's so just like I said, it all boils down to your belief system. I believe they are with us all of our days, and then if you call on them, they will help you out.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so on my right, I have this gentleman, my core maths teacher, Sir Francis, one and only core maths teacher. Sir, please, I'd like to ask, please, would you urge others to come to this place?
Well, thank you for such a question. Yes, I will urge everyone to have that kind of experience here.
Why?
In the sense that it's a very nice place and the memories of our historic informations, what went on, what our forefathers and our foremothers also went through. So when you come around here, you have some experience and you have a feel of that, so that you also know what happened when you were not even existing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. My name is Jemima Kwaku, and every Friday, as usual, we are live on campus.
Ghana memo ye buye ne ye pepan training centrane treasure Ghana manu empese morning kofi babone me boko ko jani bone te masanto boke ne tre Ghana man se muntie minie obra for me wo fa hundie koma modi momu jumadi mu nkonimdie nu se Jengara assassin ni eya bode de mayen mujana nanan me hwegunya de to homa yen dom yen boa yen jeyen adu me ne won so say yen so be ye biato aso mu aso kata so omanyi mu de ema so ene ebisa de waye mo magana wo beka lawyer for doctor for mami misa nurse for ready for driver for mami misa fita for ekwa for tailor for mami misa baba for soldier for teacher for mami misa suku